Hi everyone, this is Kirsten Davis down in Gulfport, Florida at Stetson University College of Law. I'm here with a number of panelists today to talk today about innovations in upper level legal writing. Jason Palmer is here to be our moderator. Carolyn Browing-Jacobs is here from Cleveland State, as is Tamara Herrera from Arizona State, and Joe Morrissey, who is here with us at Stetson. If anyone can hear me out there, if you just type a note in the question box and let me know you can hear me, that would be great as we proceed. First, let me tell you a little bit about the control screen you've got in front of you. This is your interface. On the left-hand side is your viewer window, which is where you should be able to see all of our screens. And then on the right-hand side is your control panel. The control panel shows you the things that you can do while you're on this call, and that includes opening and closing the control panel with the little toggle button, which is right there on your screen, so you can open and close that if it's in your way. Also, this is the audio mode box. You can use your telephone or you can use your microphone and your speakers. And that if you have any questions about the audio setup, you're having trouble hearing us, here's where you can adjust your volume for your audio. If you're using telephone, you'll get a dial-up number plus an audio pin. So hopefully you already have done that if you're listening to me right now. In addition, if you have questions for us, there's a little box that allows you to type in questions. At the end of today's session, we're going to be asking our panelists questions. So if you have questions for us, just type those into the question box, and I'll be forwarding those on to our moderator. And if you're struggling with that little control panel opening and closing itself, up at the top in the ribbon at the very top, you'll see a little word that says view. If you pull down on that, you'll see a little check mark that's next to auto hide the control panel. If you take that check mark off, it will stop opening and closing itself on its own. So if you want more control over it, you can change that. Okay, so just a few announcements for us today. The webinars are now available for replay to anybody who's in a nonprofit, government, or other kind of educational institution. So if you're a member of that, you can hear our webinars for free and recorded. They are in Stetson's Advocacy Resource Center, and you can see the address there at www.law.stetson.edu, clicking on Centers and then Advocacy. There's a registration page and a login. It'll give you a password, or you can enter in a password, and then we're in a list of other types of resources under the Project for Excellence in Legal Communication. In addition, the follow-up email you get today from us will have in it the information about how to get that as a recorded item. Okay, so just as a reminder, we're going to be doing 3 more of these in the spring. The dates aren't set, or the speakers aren't set for those yet, but they will be over the winter break. So just keep in mind that we're going to be having one in February on legal writing scholarship, one in March on teaching assistance and other kinds of assistance in the legal writing program. And in April, we're going to be looking at the annual scholarship highlights, some new scholarship and new ideas in our field of legal communication. So I want to turn it over now to our moderator, Jason Palmer, who is an assistant professor of legal skills here with me at Stetson, to introduce our speakers. Jason?
Everybody, and welcome to the webinar. Just going to take a quick moment here and introduce our 3 speakers for today, and then turn it over to them. Our first speaker will be Carolyn Browing-Jacobs, who is at Cleveland Marshall College of Law. She's been at the law school, was at the law school in the legal writing program from 2000 until 2005, at which point she served as counsel to the Civil Subcommittee of the Ohio Supreme Court Rules Advisory Committee, and then rejoined Cleveland Marshall in 2008 as the director of the Legal Writing Research and Advocacy Program. She's also a frequent guest lecturer on legal writing strategy, changes in reporting opinions, and Ohio research and citation. She'll be our first speaker today in the upper level, innovations in upper level courses. We'll then be hearing from Joe Morrissey. Joe has been here at Stetson since fall 2006. Prior to that, he was a visiting assistant professor at Chicago-Kent College of Law. He was there from 2004 to 2006. Prior to that, Joe worked for Mayor Brown at Platt in Chicago and worked in Uzbekistan, and then also was in Geneva and Moscow, where he worked for a Geneva-based investment company. Joe teaches Contracts 1 and 2, Corporation, Security Regulations, International Business Transactions, and International Sales and Arbitration here at Stetson, and we'll be talking about his work with the VIS Moot Court competition. And our final speaker is Tamara Herrera, who is at Arizona State University. And Tamara teaches a variety of legal writing courses, including first-year legal writing and methods, appellate advocacy, fundamentals of legal drafting, scholarly writing, and advanced legal writing. She also writes a monthly column about legal writing for the Maricopa County Bar publication, Maricopa Law, and Tamara has also practiced law in Phoenix. She'll be our final speaker, and then after that, there'll be a period of time for questions and answers, so please feel free during the course of the presentations to send your questions to us, and then we will wrap up our presentation with questions and answers. So with that, I will turn it over to Carolyn.
Thanks, Jason. Can you all hear me?
And Carolyn.
I think only the presenters can speak
Excellent.
back, but I can't.
Wonderful. First of all, I would like to thank Kirsten and the Stetson team for hosting the series, and thanks in particular for asking me to participate. I'm going to talk today about teaching a condensed course that I team taught with an adjunct practitioner. The course was drafting for the basic business deal. We embarked upon this team-taught transactional drafting course and did it with a practitioner for a number of reasons.
Carolyn, this is
Yes?
Kirsten Davis. Sorry to interrupt. Jason, can you see Carolyn's PowerPoints?
They are up.
See them. In fact, I was about to send you a message at the to let you know that.
Everyone, hang on just a second. I think I can fix it. I don't think you took the screen from me, Carolyn. Just a minute.
Okay.
We're going to do it again. You should be able to take the screen from me. There you go, Carolyn.
Did it work?
Yep.
Sorry, everyone. Thanks a bunch.
Sorry
We're still
about
learning
that,
the
folks.
software.
Wonderful. Let me proceed. As I was starting to say, we embarked upon this team-taught course for a number of reasons. First, we did it as a way to increase our offerings in a time of, as I'm sure most of you are experiencing, very limited resources. We did it as a way to offer a new course to students who might not otherwise have time in their schedules to take the course. We did it to help respond to an ongoing need for more real-world skills courses. And I personally did it as a way to help reinvigorate my own teaching by connecting and reaching out with somebody in the practicing bar right there in the classroom. Today I'll talk a little bit about why you might consider a team-taught approach, particularly with a compressed course. I'll describe a little bit about our course and how we approach the planning and teaching. And I'll try to give you a little bit of information about how our students responded to the course, both the team-taught nature of the course and the compressed nature. And finally, I'll wrap up with just a few recommendations for planning, promoting, and teaching similar courses in the future. Let me start off with why team teaching. One of the things that we were faced with in thinking about offering a transactional drafting course was that we didn't have anyone on our legal writing faculty with significant transactional expertise in practice. So we were able to expand our expertise by reaching out to a practitioner and bringing someone in to work with us. We also thought it was a good idea to team teach this kind of a course because we were teaching it in a compressed time period so that we could give students a significant writing experience with significant feedback, the kind of significant feedback that they need to really improve and move forward. So with 2 of us in the classroom in a relatively small class, we could share the load in commenting and feedback and give students more of what we thought they needed. Now the reasons we decided to go with a compressed course as opposed to teaching it over the course of a whole semester, first of all, it allowed us to teach it allowed me to teach an additional class when my load was already full. The compressed course allowed us to, or we thought it would allow us to encourage students to take the course who might not want to commit a whole semester, a whole two or 3 credits to a course that they weren't sure about. We thought it would allow us, it did in fact allow us to squeeze an additional course into an already full calendar. We taught it between the end of the summer session and the beginning of the fall session. And frankly, it allowed us to shorten a somewhat wary adjunct's initial commitment. This wasn't an adjunct who came to me and said, I really want to teach this class. It was someone I reached out to say, hey, I think you'd be good at this. And offering it in a 2-week time period convinced her that it was something that she'd be willing to try. Now, what we did was to offer a transactional drafting course where our goal included, or our primary goal was to teach students how to translate the business deal into a contract and to draft useful documents related to the deal. So we focused on a number of things. First of all, teaching basic contract concepts, teaching the translation skill, translating the deal into a contract, drafting the various parts of the contract with clarity and precision, adding value to the deal, and ethical considerations in drafting. And those last 2 in particular, it became very useful to have someone who was actually out there in the field working, helping to guide the classroom discussion. To teach the class, we used Tina Stark's book, Drafting Contracts, How and Why Lawyers Do What They Do. I highly recommend this book. It has an excellent teacher's manual. It has great problems. Using this book with all of the resources that come with it really freed us up to master a new subject matter and develop new teaching methods in a class that we'd never taught before. We taught the class as a 2-credit class in 15 days. We had 24 hours of total class time in that 2-week period. And the way we did it was to spread it out over 3 Saturdays and 4 evenings. So we did Saturday, 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 and then the Tuesdays and Thursdays in between those Saturdays, with 4 hours on the weekends and 3 hours on the weeknights to give us a total of 24 hours of class time. In that 2-week span, the students did numerous ungraded assignments that related to their reading. So we'd have them read something, do some drafting, submit it by TWEN, and we'd review that drafting before class the next time we met. The students also drafted 2 longer graded agreements, a car purchase agreement and an aircraft purchase agreement. And we were able to, by having 2 of us in the classroom, we were able to incorporate drafts of both of those longer agreements into the course as well. Now let me talk a little bit about how we did the teaching. We took a very collaborative approach on all levels of the course. And I use the word collaborative deliberatively, collaborative as opposed to a tag team or a relay approach or some other similarly labeled approach for team teaching. I think there are a lot of models out there for team teaching, but my preliminary reading suggested that students would respond better, or would likely respond better, to a model that was more obviously collaborative in the classroom itself. I think in team-taught courses, there's often a lot of really good, interesting collaboration in course design that the students never see. And then some of the benefits of that teamwork and the interdisciplinary nature of what you're trying to put together doesn't come through to the students in the way that we'd like it to. So we tried to be very collaborative at all levels. Of course, we did it in course design, coming up with a comprehensive plan for the course as a whole and a plan for each class. We did it in the classroom itself. We both attended every class, and we would take turns kind of taking the lead in a particular segment of any class, so that I might take 20 minutes on one topic, my teammate might then take the next half an hour on the next, and so on. We'd both be up at the front of the classroom. Sometimes one of us would call on the other. We really were joint participants, even when one or the other of us was actually taking the lead with the class. The way we made it work was we split responsibility for in-class topics and chapters in the text, so that if I was teaching, if we were dealing with a concept that I was responsible for, I would, if there was lecture to be given, lead the lecture, I would lead the class discussion, I would lead the discussion of any work that the students had done on that particular topic, and then we would switch back and forth in that way. To help divide the workload and make it manageable, we then also split our review of the ungraded drafting so that I reviewed work that related to the topics that I was responsible for covering, and my co-teacher reviewed the work of the topics that she was responsible for covering. This dividing the class into segments really helped to keep class moving along in a way I think that I'm not as able to do as well in a class where I control the classroom on my own. I think in my own classes I'm not as careful, even when I try, about staying on track, because I know that I've always got that time to catch up later on. Working with someone else, I really was much more attentive to staying on plan, and I think that had benefits in the course. We were able to cover a little more material, and I think I was a little bit more efficient in my use of classroom time because I knew that it was always limited by needing to cede the floor to someone else. Another wonderful thing that happened as a result of our collaborative work in the classroom was we were able to, at least I think, model lawyerly decision-making for our students. And this came up quite by accident because I was the litigator and my teammate was the deal lawyer. I was always a little bit less secure about the subject matter than I would normally be in the classroom. And I would often find myself, before going into class, calling her, talking to her about questions I had about the material, about ways I might want to approach something differently, about a different idea that I had that I'd want to run by her. And she pointed out to me very wisely, I think, that our students would probably benefit from hearing those discussions because it sounded an awful lot like what lawyers do when they run up against a problem that they can't quite decide how to resolve. And so we adopted an approach where in the classroom itself, when I hit upon one of those topics, we'd have a conversation, or we'd have a conversation between the two of us and the students. And I think it really worked well given the student feedback that we got about the class and getting 2 points of view up front. Now, in addition to collaborating on course design and in the classroom, we also collaborated on feedback. Now, I said we split the feedback on the ungraded work, but for graded work, both drafts and final, we both commented on every student's larger agreement. And the students really liked this, and it actually worked really well for us as well. I thought that it was going to be cumbersome because we would comment on graded work separately, get together, and then agree on our scoring. It turned out that it really didn't add much additional time at all. I think when I at least when I grade on my own, I tend to spend a little more time wondering whether I've assessed the student's work accurately and fairly, and to have a conversation with someone else basically took the place of that kind of thing that I ended up doing on my own anyway. One of the things that really helped our collaboration in the course was using TWEN. We had our students turn in all of their work using TWEN so that we each had access to everything that the students had done at any time we needed it. We used the gradebook in TWEN, so we each had access to the gradebook. We each had access to the student email list. It turned out to be a wonderful resource for teaching this kind of class. I think in making this kind of class work, one of the most important things that frankly I don't think we did very well the first time around, but would certainly work on the next time, is setting student expectations. I think it's really important for both the team teaching aspect and the compressed nature of the course to set students' expectations so that they understand first that they really need to clear the decks because it's going to be very intense, and working and other significant commitments aren't going to coexist very well with this kind of a course. And second, I think it's really important to let the students know about the teaching method, because there were some students, we didn't have many in our course, but we did have one who responded very negatively to having two teachers in front of the room. It found it distracting, found it difficult to discern what the important points were, and I think that at least for students who are self-aware enough about how they learn and what's effective for them, that knowing up front that this is going to be the teaching method that they're going to see will really help the students make a good decision about whether or not this is the kind of class that they want to take. Now, from the students' perspective and the students' feedback, we found that most students really liked both the team taught and the compressed nature of the course. Slightly different feedback, and let me share a little bit of that with you. All but one student reported that team teaching was very effective. We did a separate evaluation form for the course in addition to the regular evaluation, and the students were able to give us some good feedback about how the course worked for them. The compressed nature, we had more students who were, we had about a fourth of the students, I guess, who said that it didn't work especially well for them because they needed more time to learn. I see that I am at the end of my 15 minutes, so I am going to turn the floor back over to Jason, I guess, and I will take questions at the end.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. That was very interesting and informative. I'm now going to turn it over to Joe Morrissey, who will be able to speak to us about his upper-level teaching with regard to the VIS program.
So, do I have the screen?
I see your presentation here, Joe, so I believe so.
Okay, and it's full screen.
Yep.
Great. So hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Kirsten had asked me to describe a class that I've been teaching for several years now here at Stetson, one that I'm very proud of and that I very much enjoy teaching, and it happens to combine very much legal writing and skills generally with doctrine. And so hopefully it'll give you some ideas for ways you might structure your own courses, or if you'd like to actually build this course into your own curriculums, I'd be happy to help you with that. And I'm having a hard time using my PowerPoint. Bear with me. Here we go. Okay, thanks. So the paradigm, of course, in the upper level classes here, and I think throughout the academy, is that upper level skills training has typically been taught in clinics and other legal writing courses. I think that's not the trend anymore, and this class that I'm going to talk about bucks that trend. Here at Stetson, we have increasingly tried to leverage off of our advocacy expertise and our skills training abilities to improve our doctrinal teaching. So we have things like tethered courses where, for example, we have a traditional doctrinal evidence class that is combined with smaller trial advocacy sections, so that as students are going through the evidence doctrine, they are applying it immediately in their trial advocacy sections. And that tethering has been extraordinarily successful here. Again, sort of the combination at the upper level of skills and doctrine, where each tends to reinforce the other and end up with a much more positive learning experience. In the class that I teach, it's not a tethered course, it's one class. The class itself is called International Sales and Arbitration. And again, I'm having a hard time advancing for some reason. Bear with me. Okay. So I've got some pictures here that may not make sense at the moment, but they will in just a second. I like to call this the overarching sort of aspect of what I'm doing with my international sales and arbitration class as advocacy in context. And the class is actually run in connection with a Moot court competition, the Willem Vis International Moot Commercial Arbitration Moot, which some of you are probably familiar with. And I've got some pictures here on this slide of our team in Vienna a couple of years ago, both out sort of seeing the city a little bit. That's part of the Habsburg Palace complex, or the Habsburg, sorry, Palace complex. And on the right, of course, is inside the University of Vienna, which hosts the Moot, where we are with some of the arbitrators and the team from Copenhagen. But this Moot, this Willem Vis Moot, brings together over 200 teams now in Vienna every spring, and it also is run in Hong Kong to bring universities from that part of the world together, and they have over 60 universities getting together in Hong Kong every spring. The Moot involves an international commercial trade dispute, and it's set in an arbitration forum. So the students must learn the international trade doctrine, as well as the doctrine that surrounds international commercial arbitration. And of course, they apply it to the hypothetical that is presented in the Moot. The Moot is run out of Vienna by a professor named Professor Eric Bergsten, who is, I believe, emeritus with PACE. He creates a problem every fall that comes out in approximately October. We actually use that problem in the class. So how do I run the class? Well, starting in the middle of August, which is when we start here at Stetson, I begin by teaching that traditional doctrine, specifically the Convention on the International Sale of Goods, which is the contract law that governs the international sale of goods, the international trade in goods, and then the doctrine that relates to international dispute resolution, specifically private dispute resolution and arbitration. And coincidentally, at about the same time that Eric Bergsten publishes the problem for the Vis Moot on the internet, we've just about finished our doctrinal training. So at that point, at sort of the midterm point, I administer a traditional exam on the doctrine. And from there on out, we turn to applying the doctrine to really the traditional skills aspects of research, writing, and oral arguments. The students have to digest the hypothetical problem. They have to do the international research required to address the issues that are presented. I insist that they write memoranda in pairs, and ultimately they give oral arguments at the end of the semester. So we have sort of the first half of the class being a traditional doctrinal class, the second half being what looks more like a traditional writing class, but with them combined, I think we have a very cutting-edge experience. Bear with me again. For some reason, I am not being able to advance. Here we go. So I thought it might be interesting for you guys out there to see how I assess the class. It's divided up just as the class is itself. 40% is on the traditional midterm exam, which is a test that looks more like a doctrinal traditional class test. That's given, again, sort of at the midterm point, just when the problem is issued out of Vienna. The students are then, of course, responsible for the written memoranda, again, written in pairs, which are selected at random. The memoranda themselves are about 50 pages. That's another 40% of the grade. And finally, they give their oral argument before a mock tribunal panel, and that is also worth another 20%. So the results have been really remarkable in many ways. The commitment from the students is phenomenal. One of the reasons we have an incredible commitment here is because I choose from the class the students who will be selected to be on the teams that will then travel to the competition. They will travel either to Vienna or to Hong Kong. We have teams going in either direction. So there's a competitive aspect to the class as I run it here, which really first attracts students who are highly motivated to get involved in that kind of international competition and to perhaps practice in those areas. And once they're in the class, and I limit the class to about 25 students, they are actually aggressively trying to do as well as they can. And of course, they are sort of being stretched in every direction. And they know that and they feel that. The class is a 3-hour class, but they all sort of a complaint is that it should be a 6-hour class, because not only are they doing sort of the traditional exam the way they might in a traditional 3-hour class, but they've got to do this 50-page memo and they've got to do an oral argument, and they just feel like that coupled with the research pushes them in a way that's actually sort of much further than most classes. And of course it pushes them to grow in all of those directions. To, you know, most of them have never encountered international law research, so they're sort of improving their research skills. They are, again, being pushed to write, and to write collaboratively. And the collaborative nature of the writing is also a new dynamic for them. And I try to drive home the point that it's very rare in practice, certainly in an international commercial practice, that you're going to be working alone, that the notion of collaboration is crucial. Having said that, I actually structure the memorandum so that with respect to the arguments, there's always one set of issues that relate to the jurisdictional issues in the dispute, and one set of issues that relate to the substantive contract issues in the dispute, and they're each responsible individually for one of those sets of issues, either the jurisdictional issues or the contract issues. So they're actually graded more on their own performance, but they must work collaboratively to create the entire document so that the document reads with one voice from start to finish. The tables are built collaboratively, the facts section is built collaboratively, the authority section is built collaboratively, and they're allowed to proofread and to help each other as they build their sections. And then, of course, the other dimension is the oral arguments, which we have lots of practices, and the notion of actually writing a memorandum while at the same time trying to prepare an oral argument actually is quite complementary, because they're realizing that it's the arguments and the legal reasoning that they're putting into their writing that will make the strong oral argument. And as much as my reaction is extraordinarily positive with respect to the student participation and the results that I see, their reaction is actually extremely positive as well. Again, sort of with the one negative that they all complain that there's way too much work. I've had lots of feedback in the written evaluations, and I've thrown a few up on the PowerPoint here. Some have said they can't imagine a better way to learn than this combination of doctrine with skills, right? And they comment on the fact that most of their classes are run in such a vacuum that they don't actually understand how the doctrine gets applied. But here, they really end up with a strong understanding of what it would mean to be in practice in this area. As the other comment suggests, I finally understand what it means to be a lawyer and feel confident, finally, in my choice to attend law school. So with that, I'll end, and I'm happy to take questions about the way I've structured this or anything else at the end of the presentation. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much, Joe. And for our final speaker, I'll now turn the presentation over to Tamara.
Great. And I'll just say good morning from the western United States because it's morning here. We'll just get my screen going so you can see what my presentation is on. Is not actually about a structure of a class, but it's actually about an innovation in a type of assignment, I think, which could then grow into how you structure a class. So I'll tell you first how the idea for this assignment came about. And like all good ideas for an assignment, it came about by accident. I was actually talking with another colleague of ours in the legal writing department here at Arizona State, and he had just bought a motorized bicycle to commute back and forth to work. And it turns out he found out he couldn't actually take the motorized bicycle from where he lived to the campus because he had to cross a bridge with a speed limit which there was some sort of city ordinance which said you can't ride motorized bicycles across bridges with certain amounts of speed limit. And he had no idea about why this hadn't even realized there was an ordinance to begin with. I just so happened to be teaching an advanced legal writing course in the summer to a group of about 18 students, and he thought that would be kind of an interesting research project for them. And I thought, that is interesting. They've never researched probably municipal or city law before. So I actually designed the assignment probably about 2 weeks before I gave it to them. And here was the assignment. I told them to research the City of Tempe ordinance pertaining to the operation of motorized bicycles within city limits. And then I asked them to prepare a document explaining this ordinance to the general public. I was very nervous about giving this kind of open-ended assignment where they just created whatever they wanted. I gave them no limitations on size or type or information. I just told them, imagine this document would be distributed at retailers selling motorized bicycles. And I gave them the scenario from the legal writing colleague, and many of them came up with, well, wouldn't it be great if there was a brochure that explained this or a website that explained this law? So they were very excited to have something very open-ended, something that seemed to catch their creativity. So I had to figure out what the goals of my assignment were, because this obviously it was a graded assignment, and I ended up making it the final assignment for the course. And so my goals were to have students research a source of law that they don't cover in the first-year course. Being city ordinances, I'd imagine this would work well with fire codes and other kinds of city law. I wanted them to be able to write with clarity about these areas of law. I wanted them to focus their writing on a non-legal audience, someone like the buyer of a motorized bicycle who would be walking into the store, or who would be looking up this information on a website, so that they had to use the appropriate tone and voice for that audience. And as I said, I encouraged them to be as creative as possible. Interestingly enough, after I gave the assignment, I didn't get a lot of questions about it. I had to look back in my notes to reassure myself of this. But I saw that I had office hours for the assignment, but nobody really came except for to ask me some questions about the city ordinance. It was a very complicated city ordinance, and interestingly enough, the City of Tempe held some public hearings on this ordinance in the following year and has since changed the ordinance from the one we used for the assignment. So there were some real intricacies in the law, some unintended teaching moments, but they didn't really come and talk to me about it a lot, which I thought was interesting. So I was worried that what I was going to receive were not any sort of product that would be helpful either to them or to the goals that I'd set up for the assignment. But I was very pleasantly surprised with what I received. So pleasantly surprised, I shared them with everybody. Students made pamphlets. I had a few posters. I had just basic information sheets that would be hanging, say, on a bulletin board at a store. I had somebody actually prepare the information in Spanish, which I hadn't even intended or thought of. And I had 2 students who produced pocket-sized tip sheets that could be laminated and handed out as pieces of information. So they were really wonderful projects. And here are just a few that I've gotten some permission to share with you. Some of these were in color, so it sort of misses the translation here on the screen. But this was a tri-fold brochure, the Guide to Riding Your Motorized Scooter in the City of Tempe. I thought what was really nice about this brochure was this particular student did a good job of reading the statute and taking things like the requirements in the statute and putting it in a section of what you must do, and then exceptions and other things which you could not do, and making that very clear to a non-legal audience. They also put requirements in boxes and safety information and obligation information, all very helpful to that non-legal audience. I believe the next example is also an example. See if we can get it to forward here. Another example. There we go. Brochure. This one really focusing on rights and responsibilities. Done more in a question and answer format, such as where can you ride? What's your required riding equipment? Are there any operating restrictions? So brochures were quite popular. This was an interesting one I received from a student, and as you read through it, I hope it makes you laugh, because it made me laugh as I was reading it. This particular student had the idea of creating some sort of a television commercial or a web-based commercial, and this was the script. So you can see it starts with the, "Whoa, dude, stuff you need to know about your motorbike." And he kind of animated it throughout. I thought if I'd gone back and asked him, I would have loved to hear him actually read this script out loud. This was about, I think he did about 20 pages worth of scripts talking about all the traffic laws in the city of Tempe.
Did we lose you? I think we may have lost Tamara. Jason, are you out there?
All right, sounds like maybe she got a phone call and got dropped off.
So what we'll
Sorry
do,
about that, everybody.
Oh,
We
no,
lost
she's
me
back.
for a minute.
She's back.
I'm back. Okay, good. There's somebody who's trying to reach me, but I don't think it's an emergency, so I'm just going to ignore it for the moment. So this was the script that I just left off talking about, and I would hope to have him actually record what he had intended with all the voice inflections. And this, I apologize, is a bad example, a bad PDF of the Spanish poster, the English to Spanish poster conversion that a student did. I believe the top box here was the English, and the bottom was the Spanish. So the question I usually get is, how do you grade this thing? And of course, like all good ideas, I didn't really decide about this until almost after the assignment was in. And I chose to focus on two important areas, including the most important, the accuracy of the law, because it was a very complicated ordinance. So I made sure that they caught all of the obligations, all the exceptions, and did they say it correctly. And then I just graded on clarity and tone in presenting the law to the non-legal audience. I also had students present their projects to the class. I didn't grade the presentations, and I may in the future, and they passed them around and shared their ideas. And we actually stayed an hour after the class. It was summer, so we could do this, the day that we presented these. Students found it really fascinating to see what their classmates had come up with. Here's what the students told me they loved about this project. They felt it was very real world. They felt that they were free to be creative. It was a fun way to end a summer class. They enjoyed sharing their project. And interestingly enough, even though they were reading a complicated statute and doing some outlining of a complicated statute, they thought it was no pressure. Not like they felt in, say, a regular legal writing assignment where they're asked to outline a similar statute or write a memo on it. They felt this project had no pressure. If I were to, and I thought about using this idea again, and there's so many ways that I think you can do this by using different media, a web page or a website. I just wasn't technology conversant enough when I taught this the first time to think about this. Video, which is what one of my students had suggested. And I actually like the idea of partnering with a real project, which our other two panelists just talked about. You know, maybe the pro bono board at a law school would need some help creating pamphlets regarding landlord-tenant rights or some other aspect of commercial rights. Or the law school clinic might have some sort of a project where they could use some help creating brochures or information sheets on an area of law that they see come up a lot. The other idea I've had to expand on this is to allow students to choose their own project. Many of them asked me if this was at all possible. And I think if I were to allow them to do this, I would have to build in some sort of mechanism in the assignment as I assign it so that they actually submit their idea to me and I can check the law to make sure they're not picking something that's just crazy and too easy, and on the other end of the spectrum, not picking something that would be too hard and not doable for the time frame that I give for the assignment. But those are all ideas about how to expand on writing for this non-legal audience. Many students on this particular project, we actually gave the student projects to the legal writing professor who had this initial idea to begin with, and he planned on taking many of them to the hearing in front of the city of Tempe and presenting them as ideas. And interestingly enough, as I was shopping in Toys R Us that following Christmas, I saw that the city of Chandler had a brochure, which is the city I live in, had a brochure in their bicycle department about traffic safety laws. So very real world. So my final assessment is I think this assignment focuses most on professionalism. Obviously, very important focus in lots of reports with the ABA and law schools. I know this is an increasing focus for our dean, so I plan on doing this type of assignment again, and I thought it was just a fun way to end the course. So I don't have any more to share specifically now, so I'll save the rest of my sharing for questions. And Jason, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks very much, Tamara. Well, we've gotten some really interesting questions coming in, so I'm going to jump right into them. The first question, I think, Tamara, you touched on this already, I think, by the number of students you have in the class. I think you said 18, but Carolyn and Joe, if you would also talk about the number of students you have in your class and how you manage that in terms of making sure you cover all your goals and objectives. Carolyn, do you want to take first crack at that?
Absolutely. We had 17 students in our class, and one of the ways that we were able to manage was the fact that we had 2 of us instead of 1. If I had to review every piece of every student's drafting, I think it would have been unmanageable. It would have had to be, I think we would have only been able to do maybe 6, 8 students at the most. But having 2 of us there with slightly different levels of expertise and the ability to share the load really made a difference in being able to give the students the kind of feedback and the amount of feedback that we wanted to be able to give them.
Great, thanks. And how about you, Joe?
Sure. With the International Sales and Arbitration class and with a 50-page memorandum and with just myself, although I love a co-teacher, I try to limit the class to 20 JDs. And in any given year, that's not always so possible because, again, we have the class set up so that the sort of folks that do the best in the class are able to take part in this competition either in Vienna or Hong Kong, and so there's sometimes really an oversubscription and people who are genuinely very interested, so I'll open it up to more, but it ends up being usually between 20 and 30. The other variable is if we have LLMs who are from foreign countries who are extraordinarily interested, they don't get a chance to take this class again, so I'll open it up to LLMs as well. So it ends up in some years being slightly more than 30, but having the foreign LLMs in the class actually is so valuable because when I do the team writing projects, I always make sure that an LLM is teed up with a US JD, and the exchange that they have and the collaboration that they have is an incredibly valuable experience in terms of what it means to be working in an international environment, right, and collaborating with someone from a different legal background and cultural background. So that is, it's crucial for me to limit it in some respects because, again, I have these pairs doing memos that are 50 pages, so I get, if I have 30 students, I get 15 50-page memos that I've got to sort of manage on a pretty short time frame in terms of grading, and I do have rough drafts that they give to me in advance, about a week or a week and a half in advance of the final, and I try to give some feedback on that as well. So just trying to work with these skills and training people up for the oral argument as well just isn't feasible with a larger group. I wish I could include more people. There is a higher demand here, but it's just not feasible.
Oh, and Tamara?
We limit most of our upper class writing courses to 15. Although this summer I taught this class, I took 18. And now I can't remember why. But I wish I could do more, but because we tend to have more, I tend to do a lot of projects, and I like to do paired projects that I just don't think it's feasible to have any more than 16 to 18 in an upper level course.
Great, thanks. And Tamara, then this question coming back to you again, there's actually 2 questions, and I think they go hand in hand. And the question was, first, was the ordinance problem the only assignment for this course, and if not, what were the other assignments? And also, did you grade this on a curve? Did you have to grade the class on a curve?
Oh, great. I'll take the easiest of the 2 questions first. Professor's prerogative. Did I grade the class on a curve? We don't curve classes in our 2nd and 3rd year here at ASU unless they are enrolled. I believe it's 20 or maybe it's 25 students or more. So another advantage of taking in the 16 to 18 student range is that I don't have to curve the assignments or the grades. So no curving on the individual assignments. As for what my other assignments were, that particular class, they had 10 separate writing assignments for 3 credits, and they were all on various subjects. My advanced writing course is actually a survey course. So they start out with litigation documents such as trial motions and complaints. They went on to some basic drafted documents like a statute, a will, or a contract. And this was actually the final project. I was struggling to come up with a final project and have decided I like ending the course on something creative and something that speaks to the non-legal audience, which is unlike the other documents that we write in a survey course.
Great, thank you. Carolyn, this question goes out to you. I think it was just a follow-up towards the end of your presentation. Question about student reactions to the class. Any other points about that you want to cover that you didn't get to?
You know, one thing that I think is worth mentioning is the student who reacted negatively to the class, to the team-taught nature of the class. Most of the students had a great response. They loved getting two different perspectives from folks who had practiced in slightly different areas. But one student found it very distracting to have two people in front of the classroom and completely missed our effort to sort of model how lawyers might make a decision about how to construct a certain provision or translate a portion of the deal into a contract, and saw it as us trying to agree on a position in front of the class in kind of a negative way, or we couldn't find our way onto the same page. And I thought that was interesting that students, not surprising, but that students sitting in the same classroom would respond so differently to the same thing. So, I'm sure we see that in all of our classes, but it was something that we saw that I think was worth noting. And the other thing is that there were a fair number of students who said that covering that much material in that short of time, I think about a fourth of the students thought that just didn't work as well for them as a course that would be offered over the full semester.
Great. Okay. And this question came in for Tamara, but maybe all three of you, if you haven't mentioned it, might touch upon it also. And the question was the exact title of the course, Tamara, that you taught, and how many credits were allocated to that course. And I think if the others have not mentioned that already, you might want to take that question also.
Okay, I'll start. Don't be blown away by the creativity of this title, and we talk about this every semester, how to rename the course, but it's just called Advanced Legal Writing. I need another name, but I haven't been able to come up with one, and it is a 3-credit course at our school.
Great, thanks. Joe and Carolyn, I don't know if either of you want to
chime in.
Yep.
International Sales is a 3-hour course, and it's called International Sales and Arbitration.
And Carolyn?
I taught a 2-credit course, and we called our course Transactional Drafting, Drafting for the Basic Business Deal.
Great, thanks. And then Joe, another question that came in for you was at one point you said that the pairings were random for your class, but when you have LLMs it's not random, it sounds like. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit?
Again, I think this collaborative learning turns out, and maybe quite by accident, as I think Carolyn had said, one of the aspects of her class sort of happened by accident. The students struggle with collaborative learning, I think, and they all want to be paired with their pal, and nobody wants to be paired with somebody they don't know or has a reputation for not being friendly or amiable or whatever it is, and that's not the way law firms work so much. I mean, there's some self-selection, but sometimes you're just paired with whoever you are paired with. So I tell them it's going to be random, and I actually just kind of try to make the class fun, of course. I bring, Jason, you've seen this, Kirsten, you've seen this, I have a 2-foot-high foam Stetson hat in my office that becomes the sorting hat, and names get thrown in the hat, and they get pulled during class when we are moving to the writing portion. If I have LLMs, I have 2 hats, and I'll pull one LLM and I'll pull one JD, and that's a pair until we get through our LLMs, and then it's back to JD on JD. So that's how I do it. And I think it turns out to be really, really valuable. And I tell them I don't want to hear any whining. And I'm a little bit, I sort of hit the middle ground, I think, because I do end up grading each student largely on the portion of the argument section that they write. I always tell them that the overall flow of the piece and the common sections could end up being in a common deduction, could end up resulting in a common deduction, so they do care about that, and they do end up collaborating, but their grade rises and falls with their own work on their own particular writing.
Great. Okay, and I think our last question for this panel will go to Tamara, and that's, Tamara, did you use any particular text for your course, and if not, where did you get your resources?
I use a combination for my course of a text and then extra resources that just articles and things that I find. But that particular course, I use the Writing for Law Practice by the Fagins, Falk, and Chapeau text, and then just various articles that I find, lots of examples from newspapers. So maybe not the most organized course supplement in the world, but that's the text that I've used consistently for this survey course.
Great. Thank you very much. Well, I want to thank all of our panelists, and I'm going to turn it back over to Kirsten.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for staying with us for an hour today. It's great to have you all on board, and thanks for all your nice notes that are coming through on the question and answer screen. Just as a reminder, we have a survey that will pop up when you log out today that we would love to have your feedback. It's just a couple of questions that gives us a sense of how we're doing and whether these are serving your needs and whether you've enjoyed it, what other ideas you have. So please feel free to join us again here in spring of 2010, February, March, and April, and watch that listserv for an announcement. And everyone have a great day. Thank you to our panelists, Carolyn, Tamara, Joe, and Jason Palmer, who was willing to moderate this for us today. Thanks so much, and have a great day, everyone.